Hello, gamers and game nuts. What is going on? My name is Tanek127, and welcome back to another Tower of Fantasy video. And guys, like I tell you all in every Tower of Fantasy video, thank you all so much for the love and support on the Tower of Fantasy content. If you've been around for a while, make sure you're liking today's video, share it with a friend. It might not help you, but it could help them, and it would help me in the YouTube algorithm, and I would greatly appreciate that. And if you're new here, subscribe. Ring that bell. That way you never miss any content and you'll be up to date on all things Tower of Fantasy. But what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Tower of Fantasy video. And in today's video, I wanted to do a different kind of Tower of Fantasy video. Now, I know the Tower of Fantasy content has been slowing down, and that's because, I've made a lot of guides. I've expressed my opinion on a lot of things and stuff like that. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, besides new and upcoming content, there's really not too much for me to talk about. Eventually, I'm going to make guides on all the raids and stuff like that, but I'm still learning a lot of those. I'm still getting my ass kicked in a lot of them too. So that's kind of why you guys haven't seen too many videos of the raid content and stuff like that. But I will definitely be releasing guides on those once I get the hang of them eventually. But in today's video, I actually want to talk to you guys about my thoughts on Tower of Fantasy for the PlayStation 5 and PS4 after playing it for over 100 hours. That's right, show you guys right here on the screen. I have over 100 hours in Tower of Fantasy. I have done tons of storyline content. As you guys can see here in the video, you guys can see where I'm currently working at. Now I'm roughly level 63 or 64. I think I'm pretty close to I'm pretty close to 64 as of right now. I have gotten tons of SSR. I have spent money on the game. I have grinded as a free-to-play player. I've done a lot of things with Tower of Fantasy for the past I'm going to say, month or two that has been out. I've put a lot of time into this game. I've put a lot of work and effort into this game. I'm not the most maxed out top tier player or anything like that, but I've ran around the track. I've got some battle scars, so I figure I'm a bit more in a position to talk about now. When I made my first video on Tower of Fantasy, the game had just came out. It was fresh. There was a honeymoon phase. Not to mention, I had got a review key of the game from Perfect World. They gave me early access, so that technically made that video sponsor. I guess that technically makes this video sponsor as well, since they did give me a review key for early access. However, like I said before, they've been asking for honest feedback and opinions, and that's the only way we're going to give it to you. And plus, like I said, guys, in previous videos, I'm not obligated to say anything good about the game. But so far, Tower of Fantasy has been a fun run. I do like it. For those who don't know, it is a gacha game. If you haven't looked that much into Tower of Fantasy yet, if you don't like gacha games, if you don't like anime games, it's the thought of spending money for cute waifus or powerful weapons and stuff like that, or having a semi-tedious grind to get those things, if that bothers you, then it may not be the game for you if you're not into, gacha mechanics. It is a type of gambling thing, we can say that straight up and honest. That's kind of how these gacha games work. If you've played anything like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, or any mobile games where you have to roll for high star level or high level characters and stuff like that, what the kind of deal is. It's just that with anime and built into an MMORPG. That's how Tower of Fantasy works. Now, as I've said previously about Tower of Fantasy before, and I stand by a lot of these statements that I said in my previous video, the graphics are great. The game looks phenomenal. There are some frame rate dip issues in certain areas, especially in the last areas of the game, domain 9 on that planet. There are definitely some bugs and frame rate issues there that need to be cleaned up. But other than that, the game's really pretty. The 120 FPS mode in the game definitely needs some work, especially since that's one of their marketing tools for this game. A lot of the trailers talk about how the game can be played on 120 FPS on console. That's great, but if you market that and then players actually play it and try it and it's not the greatest experience, they're gonna be a little upset. So just a little bit of advice for the dev team with that one. The story of Tower of Fantasy is actually really good, and I'm surprised for a free-to-play mobile game. I'm surprised even for a free-to-play MMO, because I'm going to be honest, a lot of free-to-play MMOs, their stories suck. I think one of the only free-to-play MMOs I've seen that actually had a really decent story was Blade and Soul, and maybe a few others I can think of on the top of my head. And that all comes down to the type of story and content that you're into. But Tower of Fantasy storyline is actually decent. I was very surprised with that, and I'm very surprised with the things I'm currently learning learning about Tower of Fantasy now. I've done raids, I've done void rifts, I've done hard mode content. I've ran all kinds of circles in this game, and I've gotten all of my battle scars here in in Tower of Fantasy. Like I was saying before, I'm roughly around level 63, 64. I believe the current cap in the game as of making this video is either 67 or 68, which will eventually go up to 95. I will say the daily leveling lifting cap thing is something I got to get used to. I'm not going to say that I hate it. I really did dislike it at first, but it's come to grow on me, and I see why they're doing it and how they, get the content out to us slowly over time, so we're not just leveling all up at once and blowing through everything in 5 minutes and then leaving bored to death. It is a cool stretch, on how they deliver content, and not to mention we've already got like one or two content updates for the game while this level cap has been increasing it. So that's cool to see that we're already getting new content, and we're not even at the point as PlayStation players yet in the game where we can access the content of the game to its fullest, because we're still restricted from level 95. And I gotta applaud them for that. Pretty nice strategy. It does keep things well, not to mention, like I said, the game does come from a mobile background, so there's all kinds of different ways to level, work on your character, do your gear and stuff like that. You know how mobile games, they'll have like billions of activities and different stuff to do because they want to keep you playing. And you can tell when you boot up Tower Fantasy and you go through the menus and you see the different systems for gearing yourself, all the different things you can do to increase your gear score, all the daily logins you can get in, all that stuff. You'll clearly see that the game was built with mobile tactics in mind. And and I think from a content standpoint, and and for having stuff to do in an MMO, I think that's definitely a good thing. There's a great variety of characters, a cool variety of waifus to my personal opinion. You'll definitely get more out of this game playing as a female character than a male character. Don't get me wrong, they offer outfits and cool stuff for the males, but you can definitely tell it favors more so, for the waifus. This was definitely a game to make a lot of us guys happy. If you if you can't tell by playing it right now. Like I said before, I've definitely got my fair share of SSRs. I've gotten several. I actually have one of my SSRs as a 3-star right now. You guys can see me in the game. I'm actually using Frigg's Greatsword, which you have to roll her 3 times in order to get. And like I said, the characters, there's a lot of good variety there. I'm happy with the classes, the weapons, and stuff like that, how the dungeon systems work and everything. I don't have too many complaints there. My one real only complaint when it comes to Tower of Fantasy for console is the port itself. And this really feels like somebody took I guess, like the mobile version, beefed up the graphics as high as they can, and just slapped it on PlayStation and, stuff the controls wherever they could. That's what this feels like right now. And now they've released a couple of patches, to address some of these. They've given you the option to customize your controls. The developers have heard us. They have done a decent job listening and working on this problem so far. However, I just don't feel like this port was very well done. There are some, optimization issues and stuff like that, which I've talked about before. I definitely think the developers do need to clean that up. But my most concerning thing is the controls and, a lot of quality of life stuff. There are some menus where you can queue up for a dungeon and you can't access the menu without trying to bring up the mouse cursor. It's difficult to do that without trying to press something else or accidentally activating some other type of command. There are menus, where you can only use the analog stick. There are menus where you can only use the D-pad. Like, whoever made this and didn't think out, like the menu optimization and stuff like that, honestly, shame on you, because, it makes the experience really inconvenient for the player. Now, like I said, you can customize the controls and bring things up to the best of your ability, but, you're only going to clean it up so much. And not to mention, you still can't do things easy in here, like taking photos, for example, and using photo mode is a bit of a complicated thing because of how it's optimized on a controller. Dancing in the club is damn near impossible because they made this weird scheme of doing your emotes with the touchpad instead of, just letting you click the emotes that are there on the screen. Like, whoever, just didn't think out any of this menu and UI stuff, just, it's really bothersome. And one thing that bothers me is that turned off so many people from the game day one. You know, when I made my first impressions of this game, especially, you know, because I was really hyped, excited. You know, I got so many comments, and I'm not mad at these people. I don't blame them. You know, saying, hey, you know, I'm not playing this. You know, the way the controls are suck and blah 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 blah. I got so many comments like those. Now, in all fairness, Tower Fantasy is going to be exclusive to PlayStation 5 for a year. So if they do bring this to other platforms, that's definitely going to give them, you know, some time to clean this up. But it's still going to be bad that the first impression that, you know, players got of Tower Fantasy on console was, you know, in a bit of an unoptimized mess. And, you know, and that's just first impressions can be everything sometimes. You know, this experience could have been ruined for a lot of players. And it just sucks that that's the case because, you know, if somebody really would have just sat in Perfect World and thought out the controls a bit longer, the experience really could have, you know, been great for a lot of people day one. And it just, you know, it bothers me. And like I said, you know, developers, they've done a pretty good job addressing this, but there's still a lot of things with these menus and all that do need work. And like I say, it's not the game that bothers me, it's just how the port was done that bothers me. But when it comes to Tower of Fantasy as a gacha game and everything else, I have no problems with it whatsoever. I think it's an awesome MMO. I would definitely recommend for you to at least give it a shot. It's just the menu optimization and a lot of quality of life stuff in the menus, you know, when it comes to queuing for dungeons and stuff like that. A lot of this needs to be thought out and worked on. Like, they really need to sit down, look at the controller, go through their menus and think, you know, hey, how can we make this better or easier for the player? That's the main thing I think the Tower Fantasy team needs to get together and address. Other than that, they got a solid MMORPG here, and if they definitely play their cards right with expanding this game later on, bringing it to other platforms and stuff like that, when the PlayStation exclusivity ends, they'll definitely have something that they can lean on for years. And I honestly mean that because, like I said, I think it's a good game. The story's decent. The combat's fun. A lot of the end game content, you know, raids and dungeons you can do, they're all fun, mechanic filled, you know, flashy stuff. These guys are great with particle effects. They're great with, you know, having multiple players and a lot going on the screen at the time without too many optimization issues. It's just, you know, like I said, the port itself just needs some cleanup. But other than that, guys, that's going to be my impressions after 100 hours of Tower of Fantasy. Let me know how y'all are feeling down in the comments below. Y'all enjoyed today's video? Smash that like button. I will see y'all in the next one. Peace out. Have a good one.